The rain fell in sheets, stinging against Anton's face as he stepped out of the alley. Water pooled at his boots, reflecting the shifting patterns of light from the 100-story buildings towering above. Everyone wore the same synthetic coats, faces hidden under the hoods, eyes vacant behind retinal displays. Everyone, except Anton. He had to be careful. The implants were mandatory for every citizen above 15. The retinal HUDs fed data directly into their visual cortexes, mapping the streets, the weather, the advertisements, every little thing in real time. But that wasn't all they tracked. Anton had his implant removed by a rogue medic 5 years ago, a sketchy procedure, but an easy decision for him. He had no HUD now, but he also didn't have a trackable signal. He wasn't on the net anymore. To the state, Anton Lusk was officially dead. But that wasn't the problem. Anton knew there were others out here like him, off-grid, scraping by in the shadows. What made him stand out wasn't that he'd ditched the implants. It was the kill count. 16 dead, all in this district alone. The state hadn't named him publicly, not yet, but he could feel the net tightening, searching, hunting for a pattern. He just had to keep ahead of them. He spotted the target moving through the rain, stepping from the hollow market into the street. The man was like the others, eyes locked on the endless data streams, the real world reduced to a blur in his periphery. He wouldn't even be aware Anton existed until it was too late. Anton crossed the street, keeping his pace measured, slipping between bodies as if he belonged. The net tracked everything, mapped every human, like heat signatures on a thermal scan. Anton understood that better than anyone. He'd once been a systems engineer for one of the deep state contractors before they deemed him a threat. Now he used that knowledge and some makeshift tech to ghost through the city, unseen, untraceable. The man turned left at the corner, slipping into the tunnel leading to the underground market. Anton picked up speed. There was an odd sensation to the hunt. Since Anton had no implant, the man was blind to him. No proximity warnings giving him away. Anton stepped closer and slid the knife into the man's lower back, just under the rib cage. The man gasped, his hand reaching behind him, trying to process what was happening. Anton knew the implant wouldn't register the knife right away. Eventually it would, when the man's heart rate spiked, but that'd take a few seconds. Anton twisted the blade and stepped back, letting the body crumple to the ground in a pool of rainwater and blood. 17 bodies now. He rinsed the blade in rainwater and wiped it dry with his coat. The street continued to flow around him, no one noticing, no one able to process what had happened. Their implants kept them insulated from the rawness of the world, reality smoothed over by overlays and algorithms. He stepped over the body and moved back into the alley toward the old industrial sector. That's where the others like him lived, off the grid. The ones who had taken the leap and had their implants yanked, rejecting the system. Most of them were junkies or drifters, hiding from some past they couldn't face. None of them had Anton's discipline, his clarity. That's what he told himself anyway. Anton knew the state was watching. The net ran deep, threading through every corner of the city, linked to sensors and walls and street infrastructure. They couldn't see him directly, not without an implant broadcasting his location. But it was time to move on. Too many anomalies clustered in a single district. Too many clean deaths. No sloppiness, no error, nothing like the usual violence of a street brawl or an overdose. Anton's kills were precise, and the state would eventually lock in on the pattern. He found the stairwell down to the lower levels, descending into the dark. The lights were out down here, power rerouted to the upper levels where the corporate class lived. No one important used these tunnels, and that made it easy to slip through undetected. Halfway down, he tightened his hold on the knife. A faint vibration emanated from the walls. Drones. They'd swept the upper levels earlier that week, a prelude to the upcoming audit. But down here, no one bothered with the lower tunnels unless the net had found something worth checking. Anton slid the knife back into his sleeve and pressed himself into the shadows. The vibration intensified, mechanical sounds echoing in the corridor. He could hear the clink of jointed limbs now, spider-like appendages extending from the drone's main, orb-shaped bodies. Their sensors cast soft, narrow beams of light as they scanned the walls and floor. Tiny probes fanned out, mapping every centimeter with meticulous precision. They weren't looking for people, they were hunting for patterns, anomalies, a discrepancy in the flow of the city's blood. A faint blue light swept past his hiding spot. He didn't move. The drone paused at the base of the stairs, its neural link pulsing through the air. Anton held his breath as the machine's sensors hovered inches away from his face. He had learned long ago how to dampen his body's rhythms, how to steady his pulse, slow his breathing to near nothing. Combined with the jammers under his coat, he was invisible, even to the machines designed to see everything. The drone's light flickered, focusing on a nearby wall and probing the old wiring behind the concrete. Then, nearly silent, it shifted back into motion and moved on, its faint glow retreating down the tunnel. Anton exhaled slowly. The state was getting smarter, more invasive. The drones weren't searching for people. They knew better than to waste time on that in the lower levels. Instead, they mapped patterns of energy use, traffic flow, air currents. Anything out of the ordinary, anything that didn't fit the rhythm of the city, could trigger a deeper sweep. Anton knew his time was running thin. He continued down the stairs, slipping into the heart of the forgotten sector. Most of the buildings down here had been abandoned after the last city expansion. Crumbling factories, old transit hubs, even a derelict hospital. This was where Anton and the others could move, but not live. No one could live here. Not for long. As he crossed the old tracks that once led to an industrial substation, Anton stopped. A faint ripple of light caught his eye, a shimmer in the darkness. He squinted, edging closer. It wasn't a drone, too small for that, but it was something tech, something active. A trap? The light flickered again, casting a subtle glow. No, not a trap, at least not for him. It was too delicate. He stepped closer, crouching beside a rusted support beam. He ran his fingers over the small device hidden in the debris. A relay node. One of the kinds that worked as a backdoor into the net. Off-the-grid access. He analyzed the implications. Someone was transmitting down here, piggybacking off the old network lines. Someone close. He followed the relay's thin wire until it led him to the far side of the tunnel. The wire disappeared through a small hole in the wall, no bigger than a finger. Behind the wall, Anton could hear faint movements, someone breathing. He wasn't alone. Anton slid his knife from his sleeve. He tapped the wall lightly with the blade's hilt, a soft, rhythmic knock. Whoever was in there would recognize it, a signal used among the off-gridders. There was a pause, then the sound of something shifting, metal scraping against concrete. A small door, barely visible, opened in the wall, and a pair of eyes peered out. They were wide, unblinking, but not glowing with the artificial light of retinal implants. Another off-gridder. "Who are you?" The voice was a whisper, female. No panic, no fear, someone experienced. "Anton," he replied, keeping his tone low. "I'm clean." The door opened wider and a figure stepped out. A woman, younger than Anton had expected. Her face gaunt but sharp. She held a makeshift weapon, some kind of pipe fused with a sharpened metal shard at the end. Crude but effective. She studied him with suspicion, her eyes narrowing slightly as if searching for something. "What do you want?" she asked. "Just passing through," Anton said, nodding toward the relay. "Didn't know anyone was running net nodes down here." Her grip on the weapon relaxed slightly, but she didn't lower it. A flicker of recognition passed over her face, gone almost as soon as it appeared. "I'm not running anything, just listening." Anton frowned. "To what?" She gave a brief, humorless smile. "To them. To the state. They think they know everything, that the net sees all. But if you're quiet enough, patient enough, you can hear what they don't want you to know." Anton raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" She glanced back at the hole in the wall and then back to him. "They know about you. About the kills. They haven't said it yet, but they're close. They've started isolating this district. You won't be able to hide in the blind spots much longer." He tensed. "And how do you know all this?" "I listen," she said again, her voice barely audible now. "There's a pattern to the things they don't say. The gaps in the net. The silences between the data streams. They're closing in." For a long moment, Anton said nothing. He thought rapidly through the implications. He'd always known it would come to this, that his clean precision would eventually give him away. But hearing it confirmed, hearing that they were hunting him specifically, it brought a cold clarity to his thoughts. She met his gaze with an unsettling steadiness. "I won't ask why you do it, the kills. This place twists everyone in different ways, but there are other ways to push back." His expression barely shifted, but a fleeting memory surfaced. Voices from a time when trust wasn't a liability. He pushed the memory aside, refocusing on the present. It was safer that way. "Why are you telling me this?" The question came out colder than he intended, but she didn't flinch. "Because your trail makes it harder for the rest of us to stay hidden, and there's enough killing on their side." "I don't need to see more," she said. Her voice carried a hint of defiance that reminded him of someone he'd once known. He forced himself to detach from the thought. Trust and empathy. Cracks in his armor he couldn't afford. Anton weighed her words. It was a gamble. She could be feeding him lies to protect herself. But the tension in her posture, her stare, it didn't feel like a lie. He slid the knife back into his coat and met her eyes once more. "I'll be gone by tomorrow." She gave a small nod, though her expression remained unreadable. "Good." Anton turned to leave, but paused, glancing back at her one last time. "What's your name?" She didn't answer at first, watching him with that same calculating look. Then, almost as an afterthought, she said, "Nira." As he passed by Nira's hidden relay point, he glanced back at the faint light he'd noticed earlier, the one that had led him to her. It shimmered steadily in the dark. For a brief moment, Anton paused, the rain washing over him as the thought surfaced. Maybe there was more than one way to push back. He dismissed the thought with a final glance at the flickering pinpoint of light from Nira's hideout. There would be more bodies before morning, but for the first time he wondered if that was the only path for him. This has been 17 Bodies and Counting. Thank you for listening to Imagine Sci-Fi.